Hey, I'm Mike the Map Maker, and this is my beginner's guide to making a fantasy battle map in Inkarnate. Over the next half an hour, I'm going to teach you everything you need to learn to make a map that looks just like this one here. That's right, we're going over all the basics. We've got layers, we've got the brush tool, stamp tool, line tool, shape tool, everything. We're going to be talking about everything you need. It's going to be great. You're going to have a good time. So let's get right to it. Okay, so here we are in Inkarnate. I've just started a new account. It's completely for free. This is what you'll be seeing if you join up, although there might be a few banners at the top that I've clicked away. Don't worry about any of that. First thing you want to do is create a new map. So here we go. It'll give you a bunch of different styles to choose from. We've got fantasy battle maps, free. So this shows you what you're expecting to make in each one, and this is what we're going to be doing today. This is perfect for making exciting maps for your D&D sessions, when you're doing big fights and battles and things. You can also make fantasy world maps. These are like big atlases for your fantasy universe to flesh it out and make it feel like a bigger place. We've got a free version of that. We've got watercolor cities, perfect for doing simplistic little city maps. We've got fantasy regional. These are isometric maps that you can make. Kind of more for scenes in the world, but you can also do fancy maps with that as well. It's just a preference. There's sci-fi battle maps, but this, as you can see, is not free. It's basically got lots of science fiction stamps for you to make science fiction maps. We've also got watercolor battle maps, so they're battle maps, but they're in that lovely, pleasing watercolor style. Lots of things you can do there. And a few other things that are not included on the free one. We've got Parchment World, which is you're making world maps again, but with a kind of old school parchment style. I'm quite fond of this one, if I'm going to be honest. You can also do battle maps in the classic style if you're feeling nostalgic. Now, whichever one you pick doesn't really matter. It's just what you start off with. When you get in there and you've been paying for the account, you'll have access to all of the resources, so you can pick and choose. We're going to be doing a fantasy battle map, though, so we're just going to click that and hit Choose Style. That'll now take us to step 2, Scene Settings. We want to give the map a name. We'll go First Map. Oh yeah, I'll put my winky face from my example before. And you can see it has editing resolution now. Also has a little info thing explaining everything, but I'll just walk you through it. You see it goes from low to medium, and if you're in the free account, you can't go above that. You get hit with the pricing screen. What the editing resolution's talking about is when it's showing you the map you're working on, what resolution do you want that to be? Now, the higher the resolution, the clearer the image is, the more precise it looks. The more, when you zoom in, you'll be able to see fine details. Now, that's very useful if you're making a massive map, but for right now, with a simple map we're making, you don't have to worry about it too much. If your computer isn't very powerful, I'd just go to low 1K. Now, the main thing to remember about these is it doesn't matter what resolution you're editing in, it won't affect the final result. So if your computer's not very strong, you can start at low 1K, and yeah, it won't look as high fidelity as ultra, but at the end, when you finish the map, you can hit export and then choose the resolution you want to export it in. So this is just for what you're seeing here. My computer's pretty good, so we can go to medium on that one. So the last thing we've got now is aspect ratio. So this is the canvas that we're going to be working on. You get some choices at the beginning. In the free version, well, these aren't available for you. Again, you're going to hit the price wall there. But landscape right now at 2K is absolutely fine and dandy. You're going to hit the create map. The icon's going to spin while it's thinking about it, and then you should see this load up immediately. Now, first shortcut, if you use the mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out. Very, very useful. So if we zoom in, even at 2K, we can still see a lot of detail in the texture on the ground. Now, if you want to move the canvas, you can see it's cut off a little bit here. Well, if you click the mouse wheel in, you can move it. You see the cursor becomes a little grippy hand. We'll grab it, move it around. Let's place it right there. And if you don't have a mouse wheel, well, don't panic. Right in the bottom right, we've got a magnifying glass and a bar, or you can click and you can zoom in as you want manually that way. Although I do find that a little bit more difficult. At the bottom, we've got some shortcuts as well. If you want to move the map and you don't have a mouse wheel, well, you can hold the space bar. You get the open palm, you can left click, and woo, you can wiggle it around like that. Perfect. So we can make it the size we want now and place it where we want. I am just going to put it in the middle and center it, and we're ready to get started. We've got all sorts of stuff. This is a basic tutorial, so I'm going to be covering just the tools and the options you need to get stuck in and get started. Okay, so first things first, when working in Inkarnate, you want to look up at the layers. Now, this is an interesting thing right here. Essentially, when you make a map in this software, well, these layers are going to work together, stack stacked on top of each other to make the final product. And it can be a bit confusing, but it's really not that bad. Basically, it's like making the perfect sandwich. This is our sandwich. The base color is our bottom layer, the bottom piece of bread, and then you can stack whatever you want on top of it to make your perfect sandwich or perfect map. Let's take a quick look at these layers. You'll notice immediately we have a layer called grid that is grayed out and has a little yellow eyeball on it. That eyeball just says show layer, and we're currently hiding the layer. So if I click this, the layer is revealed, and you can see there's now a grid on it. Absolutely wonderful. That could be very useful for things. But right now, we don't really want it, so let's just hit the button again and hide that layer. So the layer is still there, it's just hidden from view. So that is the grid layer. We're all good. We have an objects layer. We'll come back to that later. I'm just going to hide it for now. So this is our background layer. It's what we call a brush layer, and when I clicked on that, you can see it took us to the brush tool over here. This is what you paint textures onto, and underneath the background layer, if I hide it, you'll see the base color layer. The base color layer is the bottom of our sandwich. We cannot move this. We cannot get rid of it. It's always going to be there. It is the foundation to the map, but you can customize it. So it starts off by default black. You can make it white, you can make it red, you can make it whatever color you want. You can even make it transparent. That can be useful for certain things, but that does require a bit more processing power on your computer. So don't worry about that for right now. I'll just leave it as a nice dark purple there. So that is our base color. If I bring back the background, well, the background is a texture, and it's brought that and it's popped it over the purple. Now, if we look at the brush tool, this is a fine patch of dirt, but we want it to be a bit more exciting. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on this, and when you click on the catalog, you'll get all of these textures. We're using the free account, so you get Core and Core 2.0, and you can see we've got a few different textures here that we can work with. And dirt is pretty boring, so let's give it some grass. So I've clicked on grass in the catalog, and you can see the preview there. I'm now using the shape circle in the brush tool, and if I simply left click and drag, I can drag around some beautiful grass and start to paint that onto the map to my heart's content. Wherever I want it to go, it will go. Now, if I didn't like that, and I'm like, I've gone too far, well, I can hit undo. By default, it's the top left button up here. You can click undo and you'll slowly go through everything you just did. If you're like, actually, no, I did like the grass, well, you can do the redo button, just like that. And the shortcuts, you can see them popping up there. Control Z to undo, and then Control Shift Z to redo. If you use software a lot, you've probably encountered these shortcuts before, so hopefully it isn't too alien to you. It can save you a lot of time hitting Control Z and Control Shift Z. But here we go. You can see I've painted on that texture there. And if I get rid of it, well, we still got the base color underneath. Now, if we look over here, we're on texture. So texture gives us options of textures, as you'd expect. But the next one along is color. That lets you paint in just any color you want, except in the free version, you don't get that. And it's not too big a deal. I actually don't tend to use the color wheel too much. The last thing, though, is very important. It is the erase tool. Looks a little bit like a rubber. And essentially, what you're going to do is if you drag this, you'll get rid of the textures on this layer. So you notice I'm not getting rid of the grass and revealing the dirt. I'm getting rid of the grass and the dirt to reveal the base color behind it. So it's like this layer now has a hole in it that you can see what's hidden below. And that is basically everything you need to know about the layers at this point. Now, we don't want this ugly little hole here, so I'm going to hit clear because this button at the top clears everything. I'm then going to go back to the texture tool, and you'll see the clear button has become fill, and I can fill up the whole thing with grass, and that looks lovely and pleasing. So that is the basics of the brush layer. You do have different shapes you can use, and of course you can customize the shape of what we're painting on. So let's go back to dirt real quick, so this will make a nice easy contrast. If I bring in the grass texture, well, brush size simply determines how big your brush is. At 200, we're dropping lots of grass. Lovely. Now, if I bring this back down to regular size, next up we have opacity. That literally determines how opaque your texture is. So at 100, it's 100% this grass texture. At, let's say, 25%, it's a quarter the opacity. So you can see there's a little bit of green, but not much. You can still see the dirt texture below. And if I pour on top another bit and then another bit, you can see each time I do, the grass layer comes in thicker and thicker. So you can kind of start to blend textures as you please. So if I go to 0% and then we draw, you'll see nothing is happening because
it's completely invisible, it's transparent. So you don't often draw with 0%. Next up, we have softness. This is the edge of the brush, so it's 100% softness. It has this lovely blend to it. We like that. If you go all the way down to 0, well, it becomes this very stark, very high contrast edge. Can be useful, but most of the time we want it soft, and we can kind of blend the textures together with those soft edges. Lovely old job. You can also rotate the texture to what you want, and the texture scale literally is how big or small you want the texture. So if I make it mega, mega big, it's like we zoomed into the ground. You can see all the grass there. If I go completely the opposite way in the texture scale, well, it's like we're a million miles up in the sky looking down. You can barely see that it's grass at all. We've got an edge tool now. Let's switch to a different texture. The edge tool is a lot like the circle tool that we've been using, but it has a thick edge. Quite useful on the world maps for drawing islands and oceans and things like that. You can also use grid blocks. You see, you have this weird square hologram thing going on there. If I click, it starts to do it in patches of squares. Now, if I bring back the grid, you'll see that it's matching the grid that we have. So this can be quite useful if you're being very precise. You can make the brush smaller and hit less squares. You can make it bigger and hit more squares. It's entirely up to you. That's another way you can do it. Next up, we're doing the shape with rectangle. You drag the shape you want and just hit apply. There you go. Perfect. We can drag the shape over, hit apply again, pop blocks down as you please. Look at that. Glorious. You've got the circle tool, the ellipse tool. You can do circles and ellipses however you want with the exact same idea. We've got the polygon tool. You hit apply. Boom. What a strange abstract piece of art we've made. But this gives you an idea of all the stuff you can do with the brushes in Inkarnate. And of course, this is all just on our background layer. So let's go back, get dirt, and hit fill. And I want a nice little foresty scene. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to sit down, we're going to make a little forest really quickly. I'm going to go into the brushes tool. I'm going to go over and grab my circle, because this is my favorite one. I'm going to grab the grass. I'm going to bring down the opacity a little bit. And I'm just going to draw us a bit of a foresty scene. So I want some of the dirt to poke through, but not a huge amount. We can always change it later. And you can see, there we go. It's a bit of an uneven texture. Wonderful. How are we going to make this look like a forest? Well, it's time to bring back a layer we ignored earlier. We're going to look at the objects layer. So I've clicked on the eye to reveal it. There's nothing inside, so nothing has been revealed. But this gives us the option to start putting down stamps, lines, and shapes. These are our bread and butter. Wait, no, we're making a sandwich. It wouldn't be bread and butter. Think of this as like ham, tomato, lettuce. These are the bits that make the sandwich exciting. So we want to make a forest scene. Let's add some trees. So we're on the stamp tool, and you can see over here we are defaulted to trees, which is perfect. We really want trees for our forest. Now, once again, we have a scale. We can increase the size of the stamps. We can decrease it. Whenever you're happy, you just left click, and boom, we've got a stamp on the map. Look at that. A lovely happy tree, and we've shrunk them down even more. The stamp starts with this dice symbol that randomizes the stamps, so you can click down loads of trees, and it'll automatically pick different ones there. Quite pleasing. And these stamps, well, they're not painted down like the texture, because before the texture, if I go on the background, you can't do anything with it. You can't click it. You can only paint on it or erase. The stamps, however, you can pick up, you can move, and you can change. So if I increase the scale of this one and go for a big tree there, I wasn't like that before. If I go over here and I don't like this one, well, I can delete it by hitting the backspace button. Let's delete a bunch of them. Let's say I like this arrangement. I would like to go for this again. Well, you can hit Control-C for copy, hit Control-V for paste, and now we've got an extra set there. So each shape is its own thing. You can see it over here in the objects layer. You actually have this little sub menu where you can see each tree individually. You can even rename them. So what's this one? Let's call this one something interesting. Rename Special Tree. There we go, that's the special tree. It's the big one, and we can see it there, and we can click on them like this. So if you click on them, you can delete them as well. So let's get rid of everything here and go back to the stamp tool. Now, we've got these trees, they're pretty good. But other things you can do is you can affect the rotation of the stamp. So you can change which orientation it has. So if we want to make the trees and the forest look natural, well, we can hit the dice button down here. And every time we plant a tree, it's not only going to randomize what type of tree we've got, but the orientation that tree is in as well. Very good for just randomly making stuff. Love that. I mean, that looks kind of fun. But here's something to talk about, because it's reminding me, when you're making a map in the default, you need to save your work. Otherwise, you're going to lose it. Thankfully, it shows you the changes you've done since the last time you've saved. And when you click the save button, a few seconds later, it'll save. And it prompts you quite often when you've done lots of changes. So that's quite useful. They're also working on an auto-save feature. So if you're watching from the future, then that hopefully is just doing it automatically for you. So we've talked about the scale. We talked about the rotation. Don't worry too much about the sub layers. We've got opacity again. So we We've got ghost trees. Woo, very spooky. And what else have we got? Bring that up. You can do things like affect the shadow, blend mode, all this stuff I wouldn't worry about. We'll come back to that later. Right now, we've been able just to put trees down, and that looks pretty good. So let's do a few more trees. I'm going to bring the scale down here quickly. Place a few down here, maybe a few down here. I'm imagining we're going to build something kind of in the middle of the map. So that looks pretty good. We've already got some trees. And if you want to do different stamps, well, guess what? You've got all these stamps available at your fingertips as well. These are the ones that are included with Inkarnate free. You get lots of different stuff to play with. This is more than enough to get you started. We started off with a tree. Let's place down some rocks, maybe some big old rocks. So you can always search in here for what's available. And in the core, we've got some pebbles and things. So I'll bring this out. We'll make it really big. We got some big rocks there, some big rocks over here, maybe some rocks there. You got to have some rocks involved. Perfect. It's starting to look more like a real forest that some adventurers could walk through. But we still got a long way to go. So these are the stamps. You can see they're all in there now, and you can select what you want. In this submenu, you can also hide all the stamps you're working with. So you can select everything, hit hide. They're there. Maybe we want to just get rid of all the rocks. We can do that. Dead simple. You can also lock them, so you can no longer click them. If I just want to mess with the trees, I don't want to mess with the rocks, well, now I can do that, and I won't mess with all of that stuff. And finally, what's this one? You can hit select all objects. If I want to just select and move them or delete them, that's a nice quick way of doing things as well. So that's another thing we have mastered, gang. We're getting there. Let's take a look at the next one. We're going to go for the line tool. So the line tool, well, that's going to be an object as well. So it can go on our objects here. I'm just going to draw a little bit of a cliff. That's going to go over there. Now, by default, it's set to a dashed line. We're in color. So in this one, you can change whatever you want this color line to be. If you just want something to be simple, change the colors. But we don't want to do that. That looks weird and fake. We want to go to a stamp. And what this does is it changes the line to be a texture. So we've changed the line. Let's change it to something that looks natural. We'll go to cliff. When using the free edition, you only have core and core 2.0 access to you. If I try to do, say, cave, it'll hit me with that wall again. Don't worry about it. These ones are pretty good to start off with. So we'll try this cliff here. And look at that. It's already looking pretty good. With the line tool, you can increase the size. That looks a bit bonkers. That looks completely unidentifiable. So we want to go somewhere in the middle. That looks like a good amount of cliff. Maybe a smidgen smaller. Perfect. And if you want the cliff to change direction, well, you can just hit the flip button. It's got these nice little flip ones. And you see the edge this way is pointing out there. If I hit the button, it'll now be pointing inwards. But we want it pointing outwards. This is going to be the high ground. Perfect. You can affect the size. That doesn't change the texture. That's just the size of the line we've done. I was quite happy with that, so we'll leave that at, what was that, 100%. You can rotate like you'd expect, and don't worry about the rest of it. Again, we have opacity. That is our line layer done. That looks pretty good. With the lines, you can do them as I did with freehand. So I do a little circle there. That's like a little plateau or something. Very nice. Very cool. Let's get rid of that. If you double click on this, or triple click, you'll see all these dots. Well, this represents the line I drew. These are the nodes where it's figuring out where the texture needs to go. So you can actually mess around with these and drag things out and drag them around. So I've made a little alcove there. That's very cool. Or you can delete them if you think, actually, I don't need this many dots. And you can affect the line that way. Another thing you can do is use the pen tool. You can make straight lines like that. Ooh, it's like the Bermuda Triangle or something. Everything is still the same. You're just doing it with straight lines. And again, you can affect these. You can double click on here, add these nodes, and affect it how you want. And if that's looking a bit too artificial, the straight lines, like this corner looks a bit weird, if you go to the top, you can change the node type to curved. So there we go. Having it a bit rounded there. We'll round that one off there. We'll round that there. We'll round that, and we'll round that. And you can just affect the shape of it. And it's dead simple. Lovely old job. Okay. So that's the line tool, looking good. Let's go to the final thing we're going to learn today, the shape tool. Very similar to the line tool. You'll see we have a free hand, a free draw style. We've got the pen tool. We've also got a brush tool, which is interesting as well. Have I ever used that? Oh, look at that. A smiley face. Boop, boop. Hey! So I've never used the brush tool before on that. I didn't even know that was a thing. That's pretty cool. We've also got shapes that you can use. Rectangle, ellipses, polygons. You're all familiar with this now. What we're going to do is we're going to make a little log cabin. I'm going to draw this out here. We're still on the cliff. That doesn't look quite right. So let's go to the catalog and change the texture. If I undo that, we can see what's available to us. Looks like we got some nice wooden walls. So I'll hit that. And look at that. We got a nice square made of wooden walls. Lovely stuff. If I go to select now, I can start to move it and rotate rotate it like it was a regular stamp, and we'll make it, yeah, about this big. Perfect. Now, what makes this interesting and different from the line tool is that this creates a shape. So, for example, I could do this with the line tool there, but it's always making it complete. There's never a gap. So if I do that and hit add, well, I've got myself a little terrible shack there. Now, the reason we do this is because you now have the option to use the fill tool. If I click this, we can fill the inside of this shape with whatever color or texture we want. So if we want a stone floor, we've got that. We can make it smaller. This is a log cabin. Let's give it some wooden floors. That's quite nice. Boom. Lovely stuff. So we've got a shape and we can affect it now. If you don't like the shape of it, we can add nodes, remember. Move it up, make it more complicated. Make the building bigger, whatever you want, you can now do with the shape tool. And you've got yourself a little building ready to go. All of this still in the objects layer. If I click away, we've got the texture underneath. So what are we going to do now? Well, let's zoom in a little bit and take a look at our cabin. We want to make this cabin feel like a real place. So I'm going to reduce the size of the walls. We're going to go to the stamps and let's add a front door, something like that. I've typed in door in the search bar and look at that. We have a door in core, so we can use this. And if I rotate it around, it's quite a big door. Might need to shrink this down as well. Let's go to about there, and you can just place it on top. Okay, so I placed the door, and now I have to explain something a bit more complicated, because you remember how I said the layers are like a sandwich? Well, guess what? The sandwich has a sandwich inside. You see, I placed this door stamp. It's automatically gone over the wall. That is what we wanted, but what's going on there? Well, all these stamps are on a layer within this layer. So, with the layers, you can move them up and down. So if I move the objects underneath background, well, we've reorganized the sandwich, haven't we? Those objects are still there. They're just underneath the background. Interesting. So don't worry too much about that. What you need to know when you're placing stamps is that you can place stamps on top of each other, and that is crucial to make the maps look okay. So in this instance, everything is on 0 and everything is on the same layer. So this door, well, it's going over absolutely everything. Now that can be useful, but sometimes we might not want that to be the case. If you want to change things, so for example, let's say we wanted these rocks again. So I'm going to copy and paste. What if we wanted them underneath the tree? That doesn't look quite right, does it? So to make this work, we need to look at sub-layers. So we've got the sub-layer option here. In the top right, we've got the main layers. So we've got objects on top of the background, on top of the base color. Now, with the sub-layers, we can control this section and what goes on top of what. So these stones, I want them to go underneath the tree. They're on layer 0. And the trees are on layer 0 as well. So if I go to sublayer, you can bring it down to -1 and look at that. It's now happily snug and safe under our tree because we've relayered it. Everything is now above these small rocks. So for example, I can put them underneath the building. I can put them underneath other rocks, the cliff as well. These layers are useful for when you want to do things like that. And you can also change it quickly just by having the object selected, hitting control, and then up and down on your directional keys. You can manipulate them this way. The sublayers go all the way from 10 to -10, so you get lots of customization. We'll leave the rocks there at -1. We'll give them a spin as well, so it's not so uniform. And now we can understand why it's on top of the walls. Because the next thing we're going to add, if we go back, I want to type in window. I want to add windows to the building. So I get my windows here. I'm going to turn off the randomizer on the stamp. I'm going to organize it how I want, shrink it down. That looks pretty good. Place that there. Let's place another one over here. Maybe another one over here. Fantastic. We now got a room with some windows. This cabin's looking pretty good. Let's add some stuff to the cabin. How about a bed? If you're living out here, you definitely want a bed. So let's rotate this. Let's put it in the corner. Here we go. And place that right there. And we've got a problem. This is sticking on top of the walls. That was fine with the doors and the windows. We don't want that to happen here. So you guessed it, I'm going to reduce the layer. But now we have a new problem. It's underneath absolutely everything. Look, the bed is shy. It's hiding. Ooh. What we want to do is we want to bring it in between the walls and the actual floor. So to fix this, we want to click on the shape and we'll have the shape there. And what you want to do is you want to go to these advanced options here. You have the option to separate the walls and the floor into their own sublayers. So if I bring the walls down, well, the floor is now on top of it. Let's put the walls at 0. What we want to now do is go to the floor texture, hit that, and we want to take that down to -1 or -2. Sure, why not? Now the bed is above the floor, but it's underneath the walls. Bonkers. We can add all sorts of stuff to this room now. What about a table? There you go. How about a bookcase? Bookshelf, I guess. Sure. And you can place these how you want. And they're now all defaulting to -1. So they're underneath the walls, but above the floor. Cracking stuff. And of course, underneath this, we have the textures. And underneath the textures, we have the base color. All comes together to make a perfect map sandwich. So this is looking pretty good. We're going to add some dirt down here. There we go. And we'll add a little bit of space over here. And we can customize this as we want. So at this point, we've covered everything you need to know just to get cracking and start making your own maps. We know about the brush tool. We know about the stamp tool, the line, the shape tool, the layers and how they interact. And at this point, it's just about adding more and more stuff to give it a bit more complexity. For example, if we go back to background, we can add more textures. We can add some long grass to it, make this look a bit more like a forest. So wherever there's green, I'm adding some grassy bits there. And you know what? Let's add even more grass in between the trees. That looks good. We can just go around and just paint that in very nice. And if we're doing that, well, let's get some bushes. We want some bushes in the forest. Here we go. Now, again, we need to make sure these are under the trees. So I'm going to drop them down to -1 and we can start randomizing these stamps, placing them all over the place. And it starts to go from something that looks simple and basic, with all these tools at our disposal, could start to look really good. There we have a problem. Those stones are too high. Let's bring them down another layer. That looks good. So you can bring in other stuff. We can do these kind of scraggly bushes, maybe. What else we got? Yeah, these are maybe little ones over here. Stuff like this. On the cliff edge. That looks pretty good. Maybe a few more down here. Okay, I'm liking that. And then we could do some other props. What about some crates? Maybe over here. That looks nice. Yeah, you just keep adding and adding, and eventually you might have something that ends up looking just like this. Okay, here is my example. I've added a bunch of extra stuff and spent a bit of time on the textures, making it feel good. I've added some more stuff inside the building. This person who lives here likes to sail, maybe do a bit of fishing, all that good stuff. Basically, when you get to this point, you're done with your map. What do you do with it now? Well, you go up to the top left to these dashes here, you click them, and of course you can save. But what we want to do if we want to use this is export as image. So if you export as image, you'll have this menu here. So like I was talking about in the beginning, we now get to pick the export resolution. So we might have been watching and making the map on our screen at 1K, but now we have the option to boot it up to 2K. That shows you how many pixels are involved. You get your file format. JPEG is pretty standard, and you can affect the quality to bring up or down the size of the file. PNG is probably the best file type if you want pure quality. And if you want smaller file sizes with quick loading, well, WebP is great for that. That's what I typically use for my VTT Foundry. Now we're ready to go, and we can hit export, and then that'll just save it straight to the downloads. You have some other options here, but we can ignore that for now. And there is our map. But if we want it ready to go in the game, we can add the grid there. And you can see the grid is actually underneath our object, so I'll bring it to the top. And now we can have tokens on there. So I'm just going to change the grid size. You have all these grid options. You can do little diagonals, hexagons, vertical hexagons, whatever you want, really. We'll go with the classic squares, and I make them a bit bigger. Oh, that's the other way. Make it something like that, maybe. Yeah, perfect. That looks pretty good. And if we export with this, we'll have the grid on top as well. So I'll export again, save and export so we don't lose any data if it crashes. It'll take a few seconds to save. So if I go to my downloads, Control J, we can see I've got my maps and they are raring to go. We've got the regular map there, looking glorious, and we've got the gridded map over here as well. Lovely old job.
Well, there you have it, gang. You've reached the end of the tutorial. Well done you for smashing it. You've leveled up your map making game. You now know the basics to make all sorts of maps in Inkarnate. Give it a go, have a play around, and if you liked this, well, like, subscribe, give me a comment, that'll support the video. I'll hopefully go on to make loads more tutorials, and we can truly unlock your map making potential in Inkarnate. Anyway, I'm Mike the Map Maker. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.